Hello, everyone. Welcome to, I think this is episode 12. Am I right, Doug?
Yeah. We're at a dozen.
Dozen for an enterprise that just started in early October, late September, thereabouts. I'm pretty pleased with our prodigious level of output here, bud. I got to say.
Yeah, me too. I'm really happy, especially considering that the hurricane came through.
So this is episode 12 of the Ed Non-Tech podcast. I'm Dr. Matt Stranick with you, and as ever, also joining me
Is Dr. Doug Reed. Hello, everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And Doug, I got to say, as always, you put together a really compelling, interesting topic here, which I think is maybe curving back to some of the discussions that we've had previously, which was no doubt in your mind. The title that Doug's put forward here for this episode: Lifelong Learning, Does Technology Help, Hinder, or Both? That's simply an amazing topic. I've got a few things that I've looked at, but I will say before diving into it particularly, I just wanted to acknowledge that I am on the unceded traditional and ancestral home of the Secwepemc people here in Secwepemc-Ulu in Kamloops, British Columbia. It's been such an honor to be here since I arrived, and I'm sort of engaging with a I would almost say lifelong learning kind of enterprise with, the indigenous peoples and cultures and ways of being and knowing that, inform very much the present moment, uninvited guest though I am. So, just really mindful of that, I think, at the, this time of year, right, as we're sort of looking back at the year that was and ahead. So.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in and say I continue to be in the territorial or the historic territory and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people on the east coast of what is now Canada, and I'm honored to be allowed to continue to be here.
You're not going to know. Yeah.
I've got a dog in the background wandering around, so if you see a shape, it's not the ghost of Christmas future or past or present.
It'd be cool. It'd be cool if it took on an animalistic form. Now that I think about it, though. Christmas Carol, the Pets version. I'm sure somebody's done that already.
Well, why don't you do it? You're a writer.
Yeah, a writer without an income from writing is more of a hobbyist, I'm going to argue. But it's all good, man. But so again,
John Scalzi and Neil Gaiman would argue of your definition. They had a Twitter thing going on where somebody was criticizing John Scalzi because he didn't write enough each day. And Neil Gaiman just jumped in and nuked the guy and said, "I wrote Coraline 50 words a night." That's what I did, and I'm a professional, I guess.
I am always glad to hear Neil Gaiman mentioned on this show. This isn't the first time. I've actually got, I need to dive into him a lot more than I have. I've actually got under my coffee table there a bunch of coffee table books, including like this large annotated American Gods edition, the novel that he put out. And they made a TV series about it and whatever. I was like, all right, Value Village. Good finds there, my dudes.
Oh, so,
yeah.
American Gods knocked me out. Like, I didn't see it coming, and I was like, are you kidding me? It was so obvious. It was so good.
Well, the art of the storyteller is often, to be a trickster as well a bit, right? So.
Oh yeah, and speaking of tricksters, between my wife told me today that I was either a bit of a crow or a bit of a raven because I keep picking stuff up to give her. Like we go to the beach and I'll pick up the shiny rocks or the bit of sea glass. And it's like, hey, look what I have for you today.
Well, and trickster is kind of in my mind, again, just kind of, in my ongoing exploration of the, Ignatius excellent
Oh
reference
yeah.
book here. And I've said this before. I mean, it would be really awesome to imagine that, other indigenous communities and groups, had this kind of level of documented resource, at their disposal. Because I mean, again, I just kind of keep picking it up. And just before the show, one of the things I was looking at was the coyote stories. Right? He's a
Yeah.
trickster. He's not always an agent of positive energy. He kind of causes chaos and whatnot. But ultimately, he's a powerful figure, a vigilant figure, who's vitally important to the Indigenous and First Nations communities within their narrative and lived traditions. So you're the trickster thing there. I'm just sort of I guess I kind of had that in mind from the Ignatius book.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah. All right, man. So why don't you give me just a bit of an overview as to why you thought of this topic now? If there was any aha kind of moment that led you to that before putting it in the Google Doc, too?
When we were talking on a previous episode,
Okay.
we were talking and talking and talking, and this popped out of that episode, and I thought I want to dig into that more because I have a bias. I am a lifelong learner, and I have zero plans to stop being a lifelong learner. I am going to keep learning stuff. I was at it was weird. I was at like a Christmas lunch thing, and one of the people at the table asked me if I was a singer. And I'm like, what? Like, did I hear that right? And it was like, oh, you should be in a choir. Your voice is so wonderful. And I'm like, I'm taking that as a compliment. And
well, I've been meaning to say, Doug, it's kind of mellifluous, when the recording equipment agrees. It's
yes.
So that's an interesting compliment, I guess. How did you respond in the moment? You sort of took ownership of that, yeah?
I took the compliment. That's one of the joyful things I learned from doing my doctorate was I know what I'm good at. Like it's not arrogance, it's confidence. I learned a bunch of stuff. I was a world expert back in the day, right? That was a few years ago. And I can accept compliments now. It's thank you. I greatly appreciate that. 20 years ago, I would, oh, no. But it's part of the growth I've had as a person where it made me feel nice. And I thought, hey, maybe I could sing. Maybe I'll add that to the list of all the other things like sign language and building a boat and whatever else I want to learn how to do.
Do you know American Sign Language, or is that on your list to be learned?
That's on my list.
Okay.
That's on my list. I have a pile of different things I want to learn because basically, like, if I want to communicate with somebody, like in a shopping mall, like my hearing is rubbish, right? I lost a good chunk of my hearing when I was a kid. So if I could do sign language across the room at somebody, oh, that'd be wicked. That would be so good.
You're thinking of potential practical applications, and that I think is one of the if you're just sort of speaking to educational engagement and motivation, you kind of have to have that larger picture. You kind of have to be able to see at the end of the tunnel, whether you're a high school student or an undergraduate or a doctoral student, that this is going to have some kind of bearing on your life, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to do it. You just you find something else to do that's more meaningful. I totally applaud. You described on the show a few times your sort of predilection for picking up new and to outside eyes possibly esoteric things, licenses and whatnot. Is that a fair thing to say, Doug?
Oh yeah. People look at me and they're like, "What? Why did you?" It's like I was interested, so I did it.
And that should be all the reason you need. So
yes.
So maybe then what we're hoping to do is kind of through this kind of discussion, limited though this the immediate maybe scope of it is to maybe help raise public perception a little bit of these kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
And we're going to use technology to be a helpful tool to do that, to tie it right back to our topic.
I would like to say that this is a safe and supportive environment, even though, between us and, whatever actual or imagined audience, there isn't really, I'm not getting a lot of direct contact at all from people about it. I'm simply doing it based on the knowledge that I'm enjoying it a lot. It's meaningful for me. And, even just, the 10 or 12 or 9 people that we have that check it out on a regular basis, you never know what impact you're going to have on any one individual's life, right? You never know what train of thought you're going to set off that leads to actions in somebody else's life. So that was always kind of how I looked at it with the Pro D sessions that I was, I kind of put out there. When I was at TRU and previously, it was like, one person or 2 people may even show up for this. I'm remembering now when you first arrived at TRU, basically thereabouts. I had that Pro D session at the Writing Center, and like you and one other dude, a business professor, came to it. I enjoyed it, and there was like one, sort of undergrad student who was like, dusting the computers or something and tidying up, and she kind of look over every so often, just kind of mixed curious and maybe, what are these older dudes talking about, anyways, dude, I'm just kind of
but that was a great session, because without that session we wouldn't be doing this. I bet
it was like my first, I think I even said it in the thing, I'm like, it's so nice to meet somebody else here from Atlantic Canada.
Yep.
I don't know, man. I just, I'm really, I was really, I don't know. I experienced this at TRU, and this isn't to make, any gross, kind of things we have at TRU. It's like, I did wonder, like, do I come across as like a hillbilly or a hick? I kind of had to wonder, man, because I just, other places that I've spent time, the culture and I did not seem to be, quite as at odds, at times. So I'm just like, maybe I really am. Maybe I'm just a hillbilly, man. Like, I'm just a hayseed, and people are just like, that guy, he's all like rhetoric and, colloquialisms, right? Anyway, I've been looking at the Stoics. I've been reading this awesome online book, The Lives of the Stoics. I'm about 30% of the way through it. And dude, your interest in history, I don't know. Do you pick up history stuff from time to time? Speaking of lifelong learning, just to
all the time.
Yeah. So what's your like most interesting, like what kind of period of history are you kind of more or less not most interested in, but you know what I mean? What's
I don't have a most interested. When I was younger, it was the wars. It was what
modern wars, you mean?
Well, by modern, it depends. Like, is the Napoleonic Wars, is that modern?
I would say, yeah.
Yeah, so
sure, why not?
Or the Battle of Agincourt, is that modern? I'm fascinated right now by the Indus Valley culture that we don't know much about. That was big and then disappeared without a trace, barely.
Africa, right? Africa, right? God help me.
Indus Valley. That was more Asia.
Oh, okay.
Over that way.
I'm clearly evidence that we don't know much about it.
But I'm just fascinated by that right now, right? And I moved through stuff. I ended up meeting a guy. This guy was a craftsman. Like, I love talking to people that know what they're doing. And this guy could take a piece of wood, and he had like the knives and the chisels and stuff, and he would just sit down and he would put together this work of art, and I would watch it come out of the wood. And he said, and I'm into half holes. If I ever show the picture of this computer, right, there's 9 half holes up on the wall in front of me, like, because I love them.
Sorry?
Half holes. It's
I don't know what I don't even know what those are. I'm sorry. Like, I was like, am I mishearing that? Like, what are we? Oh, hey, okay.
So, so a boat builder could take this and do the measurements and make that whatever size they want. Like, this is whatever, 20 centimeters or something.
That's the basic architecture of what becomes a boat.
Yeah. And
Wow.
this would give you all the measurements. If they do the measurements in the right place, you can say, okay,
and then extract it proportionally to the larger structure in 3 dimensions.
Yeah, so before AutoCAD was a thing, like I picked one up from, it was funny because I was out in Edmonton and picked one up. And I'm just going to pull it down.
You know, I'm really liking the metaphor here, you know, of, yo, man, that's dope. Yeah.
It is. And when I bought it at some little shop off White Ave. Yeah. And the guy's like, you know, that's not like an official one, right? And it was like, yeah. I said, dude, it's $35. A real one would cost $15,000.
Yeah, this is like, you know, I'm not going to build this ship, right?
Yeah, I'm not building this boat.
It's
Edmonton.
You got the you know, you got the consumer ready version of it, right? That's
yeah. And so I've bought some around the world. The Australian boat that won the America's Cup in '83. I lived really close to where that boat lives now. It lives in the museum in Fremantle. And so I have that half hull, and I have a bunch that I've made. I've got the blue nose because I'm from Nova Scotia. I don't have a choice. That kind of thing.
I'm telling you, Doug, I mean, every time we have one of these conversations, I'm like, oh, really? Do tell. Basic, again, I just to speak to the contrast a bit, but I will just say what you just introduced to me and possibly other members of our, you know, enterprise here, the audience, they might just be encountering what you just described. Half hulls? What do you call them?
Yeah. Sorry about that. I try to explain things if people don't know them.
No, that's dope.
Instead of just saying, hey, what do you mean you don't know?
No, man, that's dope. That's dope. And I like the notion of something of that, like being a microcosm for a potentially much bigger, much you know, durable structure, right? Something that starts conceptually, but with a physical element to it. To me, that just sort of, you know, speaks to a lot of what you might want to have in education generally, right? The seed contains the genesis of the tree, if you will, right? So within its, yeah.
For sure. And so I've been fascinated by these for 25 years. And I've made some, I bought some, and I watched this guy build one in front of me, like in an afternoon. And it takes me forever. And I said, do you ever do like the battleships or whatever? He goes, nope, I never do warships. I never do anything warlike or military. He goes, I don't agree with it, so I don't do it. He goes, I'll make you, I can do a schooner or a tug or a whatever, a galleon or whatever, not a galleon because they had guns too, but he would, so that's how I meet somebody new, I get a new view of things, and it's like, okay, then I move on, right? It's like, okay, maybe this is interesting. Maybe I'll explore this a bunch more.
You're a bit of an omnivore.
And I'll do it with technology or I'll do it without technology, right? Because technology is just not a tool to learn. It's also a way to find the new information, right? So how often in my life am I going to get a chance to meet a person that's really good at this one thing and is willing to share that with me? So a lot of times you have to use the technology to make those new opportunities.
So we're talking technology here, not just as a sort of quantifiable good, but as a process and potentially as a means to enabling inquiry and or, you know, to say lifelong learning, as it were.
And that's part of the LAL article, the 2011 LAL article.
Yeah,
it's all about exactly what we just summarized.
Well, and I'm looking too now at your subsequent citation, and first of all, that LAL you know, piece that you have there is really quite good. I do like seeing the 2019 citation there, the multiple authors about MOOCs and lifelong learning, because I think actually in sort of the contemporary model of the internet, where it's almost like a faucet that you can't, you know, turn off. You know, we were talking before a couple episodes ago where I sort of spoke to at the very end of it, the notion of the pedagogy of abundance. And I didn't want to, you know, misrepresent It's Dave Cormier who's largely associated with that.
Yep.
And I've got a couple of tabs open that I'll be sort of speaking to in the notes. But it's interesting because, you know, there's this sort of, Dave is an interesting case. He's an interesting guy. I don't know him personally. I've seen him speak quite a few times. There's one video from like about 2009, I think. I may have the year wrong, where he's sort of talking about this, you know, more or less in relation to, you know, the possibilities for open courses. But then in another, you know, he's talking about in practical terms when he's over at, you know, U Windsor, where he currently works now, where he talks about the pedagogy of abundance vis-a-vis the shift to online learning. So he tries to sort of contextualize, you know, how to use the benefits of the wide open internet and not become, I guess, too overwhelmed. He's sort of somebody who's gotten a lot of traction for coining the term rhizomatic learning, even though I think that metaphor and term existed before he kind of, you know, started doing some work with it. And in as much as what we were just talking about, the half hall, you know, contains the potential dimensions for the entire, you know, a much larger boat, you know, as the seed contains the architecture for the tree. I think, you know, this kind of aligns really well with that, you know, as an organic, teaching and learning online vis-a-vis organic, natural, and sometimes messy and unplanned processes, right? So,
yeah,
sorry, Dave, I'm misrepresenting that, but that was my takeaway from it right now, you know.
Yeah, and that's my joy, is the wandering down the, I never in a million years thought I would ever even think about trying to learn how to sing. And then I get one compliment and it's like, hey, maybe I could do that.
Are you gonna like join an ensemble? Like, what's your action plan to bring that further? I guess.
Well, literally, it's 24 hours old, so there's no action plan. That'll sit in my head for a while, and probably next fall.
I really believe in giving things a good long gestation period, because, you know, things slip and slide between your conscious and your subconscious mind. And then, you know, that sort of mini epiphany that you might have in the shower, or, you know, when you meet just the right person who sort of suggests something to you, you know, this book about the Stoic philosophers that I'm reading, mostly from Greek and Rome, but they kind of, they throw in some references to, you know, Confucius, because there are some commonalities there. And one of the things is, you know, you find the teacher when you're ready to, right?
Yes.
The student, you find your path when you're ready. The appropriate teacher manifests themselves, right? And that is something that is serendipitous. It's unplanned, but, you know, it's often the result of a lot of programming and a lot of work back and forth between, you know, your conscious and unconscious minds. You know, putting you into a situation both intentionally and, you know, maybe less so, right? So,
and it works better than, I do the same. I ruminate and let things roll around in my brain and stuff. Have you ever seen the internet meme? And it says, "Of course you can dance," signed Tequila. It's I'm not going to just jump right into things. I'm going to take my time.
Yeah. Well, it's you know, imagine history without that, without the liquid courage. You know, it's kind of hard to fathom.
That's it.
Yeah. So you mentioned now here as well.
So the Sullivan.
Yeah, sorry. I was going to jump to the next one, but if you want to spend some more time with Sullivan, I was going to be like, yeah.
Oh yeah, the next one is pure ego, but the Sullivan one, I like the 4 C's. I like communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking. Right? I love that concept because we need that, right? We used to have the 3 R's. We used to have the 4 R's for recycling or whatever. Reduce, reuse,
recycle. That's it. Or
and repair.
Oh,
Repair was the fourth one, but I honestly think the big plastic companies didn't want things repaired. So suddenly there's only three. That is, I don't know if that's true, but I know we don't recycle nearly as much as we think we do. We just end up dumping it on the country system.
you know, we can't even start talking about the environmental catastrophe because like we're going to go so far down a rabbit hole there. But I think actually
Yes.
environmental consciousness vis-a-vis teaching and technology would be, you know, definitely a worthy topic for us or somebody else to talk about here, in as much as that probably overlaps with a lot of you know, Indigenous and First Nations kind of teachings and you know, worldviews that we've been, you know, kind of trying to explore a little bit here on the show in our own humble, meek kind of way. I think I'm speaking about you, not speaking about me.
So let's jump to the next one then. It's
humble and meek. I was like, this is dope. I was like, but it's legit. It's legit within the context of this. So, I mean, you're the co-author and your colleague and friend, Nathan.
Nathaniel Ostashevsky.
Thank you. I'm glad I didn't have the opportunity to handle that. Okay. So, I mean, what was your tell me anything.
This was the MOOC that we did at Athabasca, and what we did is we took a whole bunch of grad students that didn't have the technical skills or didn't have the comfort with the new technical tools that were out there, the technology tool.
Question: What was the criteria for that? Was that self-selection, or, you know, just like a call out to people to participate, or how did that work? Okay.
Oh yeah, we bribed them. Yeah,
okay. Tim Hortons gift cards or the like, right? That's.
Oh no, there was 2 iPads. And that was 10 years ago, like when iPads were still shiny and new.
Right.
So if you did all this stuff, you get your name in for a draw and we're giving out. It's like, so that was a real thing.
That's dope, man. How many participants overall in the study? Do you remember? Or
I think 38 finished.
Okay, that's cool. And
and we built the MOOC, but it wasn't called a MOOC then. Like the words just weren't there. And we talked about that in a previous episode.
Yeah, so it was it was a distributed online course.
Yeah.
Of sorts, right?
Of sorts.
Yeah.
And it was great. So we got some good results out of it.
And can I just ask again, sort of just the tech question? What platform did you use? I'm sorry if you mentioned that in a previous show.
No, we used a web page.
A web page. So just
a web page with links. Here we go. Here's a video. Here's where you send and we used like a discussion forum or something to post your info there, and it was pretty low key and it worked just fine.
Low key and worked just fine. That's kind of an aspirational kind of statement I think we would have for anything that's coming out of this show, honestly. Low key, but it worked okay, you know? You didn't have to mess with the settings at once, you know? Like,
well, that's, if we're teaching people how to use the technology for other things, we don't want the hurdle of, you got to learn this technology in order to learn about the technology, right? I didn't want 2 hurdles. Right, either we're learning about this technology or we're learning about that. I don't want to have to learn this to then teach you that, because it's a volunteer activity, right? They're not going to do it.
And you're giving me the perfect opportunity here to just once more rattle my friggin' saber against learning management systems here, only in as much as, you know, when the people designed the experience and the interface for these programs, were they considering what was actually being taught in as much as students had to learn it? Because with each step and each sort of, you know, thing that the student needs to get to in order to fully, quote unquote, experience what's available there. I mean, again, I said it kind of, you know, derisively as like, you know, just learning subroutines that maybe don't have other broad applications. They've got, you know, embedded pedagogical and cultural biases, you know, and I mean, that's my.
Are they educators? are they educators or were they engineers? Right?
Or were they like marketing people, or were they like professors who were like, I'm going to license the shit out of, you know, this thing, right? Again, just
in the old days, it was. Those guys have basically been pushed out now, but
I'm just rattling. I'm just rattling my stick here because I had the opportunity. So thanks for the opportunity to kind of, you know.
To be honest, I mentioned MOOCs so I could lob one in so you could talk about your doctoral study some more. Too.
Oh yeah, man. You know, I appreciate that. No, I dig that. I appreciate that. And actually, one other of the references apart from you know, the Cormier videos that I'm going to be linking to is my COP. Rita Kopp, I believe. She's a noted academic who's worked in the MOOC space, you know, while it was sort of, she's tended to look at it, and her colleagues have tended to look at the more, you know, distributed courses, the so-called connectivist, you know, type courses, as opposed to, you know, the edX or Coursera products or whatever. And again, back in, you know, she's somebody else who speaks to the pedagogy of abundance vis-a-vis MOOCs, right? Sense making, navigating, you know, these spaces effectively, and things like that. She's had some really good questions, and I cited her a bit in my dissertation. So it's been 5 years. I realized it's been more than 5 years. It was 5 years this past September since I officially completed my thing, and I think that's the amount of time. I'm pretty sure I've got this file folder of like paper records from people, informants, where I'm like, I'm going to keep this under lock and file, which I did for 5 years, and then it'll be destroyed. And I'm like, I think I can actually go to Staples and just shred this stuff now. And that in itself is kind of a weird milestone in my life with this stuff, especially being that I'm unemployed right now and that my approaches and methods have been considered less than popular by people around.
You're not unemployed. You're self-employed.
Oh, right. Yes, in tandem with 506 Consulting.
Yeah,
right.
That's a very different thing.
I'm living the stoic kind of existence here with this practice. But seriously, man. But seriously, no, this is like I said. I'm going to say, for me, I don't know about it for you, Doug. 2022 has been a pretty transformative year in any kind of aspect. Probably more, I would say, than, you know, any typical year in my adult life, you know, thus far in quite a while. You know, some of the stuff that's happened for me personally, it's like it's right up there with, you know, graduating university and the birth of my kids. You know, some of this stuff. So. How about you, Doug? I mean, we're looking back on the year that was from our perspective.
Oh, for sure. For me, there was a couple of gigantic milestones and a couple of things I thought I knew. Because, I did that years ago. And then I'm learning it again. The lifelong learning process is continuing for me. And I've got new opportunities that opened up. And there was sometimes this year that were amongst the worst days of my entire life. And I've got other days this year that have been among the very best. So I'm trying to find the middle ground.
I feel you, man. I completely feel you. And again, maybe, sorry to anybody if that's kind of going a bit off the side of the topic here, maybe more than otherwise. But I mean, I don't know. I'm just kind of in this a bit of a reflective mode, I think, as people may tend to get it, you know, season's end or the year's end or whatever. Last night was the solstice, dude. You notice that?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Longest friggin' night of the year, right? So. Did
you see? Oh, I should have shared that one with you. I didn't put that in the list. There's another one another meme that pops up, and it just says it's dark days in Canada. Just because, like, it's the solstice.
Right. I had a telephone conversation with for somebody with an interview for a position in northern Alberta, basically in the oil sands. And apart from the fact that I still struggle with this, is it better to be kind of poor and live around Kamloops and I see my kids all the time, or move 5 hours away by airplane and make a lot more money and then only see them, you know, 30% of the time? Putting that moral quandary and personal thing aside, the interview isn't until like January 20th or something. But the receptionist was just like, yeah, it stays. If you're far enough north, I mean, where they are in the oil sands patch, basically, it's staying light out until 11 at night.
That's not, man. I used to live in Wetaskiwin, south of Edmonton, and at 11 at night, it was still light enough to be outside and read.
This place is like just north of Edmonton a bit. So,
yeah,
but
I used to live there, so
of course you did. You're like that Johnny Cash song. I've been everywhere, man. I breathe the Anyway, maybe that'll be a track to go with one of these episodes right here.
Hey, you are the music expert. I bow to your judgment.
I am merely a person who has been obsessed with the same 4 things my whole life. So to sort of differentiate here between, sort of Doug's kind of more wide-ranging and omnivorous approach, I tend to fall, just because of my life experience and, preferences and whatever. Again, it's like there's books, there's writing, there's exercise, there's my kids, and there's music. And anything that doesn't fall within those 5 categories just doesn't get a lot of interest or attention from me, which apologies to former employers and colleagues, but anyway. But it's so, but that's kind of like different, a bit, in as much as you're sort of going maybe outward with your thing, maybe a bit more. I tend to kind of like, well, what's the variation on this thing that's already here? And, people's styles and preferences change. I just think again, I'm always looking for, how can we sort of compare and contrast? Where's the overlap in the Venn diagram here, So
true enough. So we have 2 very different styles of lifelong learning.
Yep.
And that goes along with the Plaquette and Lalat definition.
Yeah, well, sure. And was there anything else you wanted to speak to about your experience with the Athabasca proto movement?
No, that's good.
Oh, well, okay,
we mentioned it. We learned some stuff. It helped. It helped my buddy a lot. He has used that a lot in his future work. So that was awesome.
One good study can really, have a lot of, side peripheral future facing benefits as well, which I've never been attached to one of these kind of larger studies because it hasn't been within my role to do so, apart from my doctoral work. But again, recognizing the worthy enterprise within academia that it is, so
absolutely.
So now
I got a question for you then. I got a question for you. We
Okay.
were talking about our 2 different lifelong learning approaches.
Yep.
And when you take a look at the technology component of our lives,
Yep.
how is it a help or a hindrance, the technology in the way, because you've adapted how you've been using technology in the last couple of months, right? Because you were the first off the Twitter train. so you technology and you got rid of some stuff and you picked up other stuff. And how is that going? Is that a help or a hindrance, or is that a process? What do you got?
Well, first of all, I appreciate the question. Second of all, I'll say that you're also speaking to a man who never learned to drive a car. So if you're talking about, sort of entrenched attitudes, I mean, that's a piece of lifelong learning that people have been telling me, just do it, dude. It's not that hard. And I'm just like, but my life is fine without it, more or less, right? And now that my kids can get around without even any assistance from me because of public transit and taxis and whatever else, bicycles, their own 2 feet, I'm just like, I really can't see taking that on. In terms of like, technology, just in terms of various configurations of hardware and software and how, they, I guess, inform, I have to say, it probably gives me a lot more of a sense of purpose than it used to, just because I think, with this podcast and now also the one that I've started with my friend Dan, the music.
And what's it called again?
Today, New Brunswick, tomorrow, the world. As a matter of
You
fact,
got to do that marketing thing, man.
well, okay, so, but I guess like within those two creative enterprises, plus the blogging that I kind of give myself to do, I don't see it as expanding the brand. I just sort of see it as like this helps me feel like that I'm still relevant in some way. But even more than an ego exercise, I mean, I really, the pathways here, the outputs, right? This Google document that comes along, every week, courtesy of you, or every 2 weeks, courtesy of my friend Dan. I mean, this is not insignificant stuff. I mean, it's an exercise in creative, in collaborative writing. It's an exercise in, two people coming together to, produce an overall output that bears everything that was intended by both people within the enterprise. So, good design is often invisible. So if it seems like something that's relatively seamless, if it seems like something that over time, has fewer edges to it because it's, I believe in once you have a good format or a good process, you don't necessarily have to go too far from that, So help or hindrance or both, I'm optimistic, man. I mean, I've staked a lot of my career and my livelihood and my personhood on, representing technology, engaging with it, and trying to make these experiences hopefully of some value to other people. It's a privilege to be able to do this stuff, to be able to live at this moment in history with this advanced level of technology in one of the most advanced societies ever in the history of the world. You can't deny that if you got white skin, you're male, you're middle class or upper class. I mean, the world was designed for people like us, Doug. And I don't know. I just think like to lose sight of that is to kind of miss something important. And now, literally, I took your awesome question and just started rambling, dude. So I'm going to turn it back over to you for a response, rebuttal, or other.
Another topic we're going to do that has nothing to do with education or technology is how this world was designed and who it was designed for. Because I'm not going there right now. But I have some thoughts.
And like, I don't want to do this whole face like, oh, well, I, don't really have a right to anything because, I'm just, European settler scum. I don't have like that facile black and white attitude towards this. I'm just saying like, if critical self-awareness and critical reflection are the only two things, that people could get from this kind of enterprise, then I'd say that's a win, man. If that's what we're trying to speak towards here.
So as we got together and we're doing this, and we've got our two approaches to lifelong learning. Right. The Paquette article talks about learning to adapt and develop new skills. We've both done that.
Yes.
Identify opportunities for change. We've both done that. Be ready to modify stable trajectories in life and work. Yeah, we're ticking every box on that list.
I'm again, I keep going back to like, these stoic people that I've been reading about, and it's just like, the notion of you cannot control outside incidents. You can only control your readiness for them, moral, mental, financial, whatever. So, the kind of year it's been, I'm just like, yeah, man, that resonates with me, right? Make sure your house is in order. And this is where lifelong learning is helpful, right? Like, we're so conditioned to just be these uncritical consumer people, where there's work and there's recreation. But if, you can sort of have a path where, no, I'm going to actively acquire, I'm actively going to participate and engage and have these kinds of, experiences rather than just, putting down my money and picking up, the thing or going on the friggin', trip to Baja or whatever. Not that there's anything wrong with going warm places during the winter. Just, anyway, man, I'm kind of rambling in here. Part of it aligns with my interest in punk rock, I think, but.
Well, part of what you just mentioned is is the Badgener article. If you only read one of the articles I mentioned, read that one. It is fantastic. It is
lifelong
so good.
learning, and the title here really jumps out too. Lifelong learning redefined from sustainability to generational learning. Okay, so generational learning. I think that's something we got to dig into a bit more here, pal, in some of these episodes.
Yeah, absolutely. Because right now, like the way lifelong learning is, it's the people that have come through. It's like, why did you go to college? I had this conversation with so many people. The BA is the most useless degree. It's a waste of money. And my first degree is a BA. It taught me how to think differently.
My response to those people have become much more succinct. I'm just like, take your pick. There's two of them. Just take your pick, you know?
Because I look at it and people are like, no, you go to university to get a degree to get a good job. And I'm like, you're missing the point, right? I didn't do that. I went to learn. That's why I did my PhD. I wanted to know if I could do it and could I learn more so that I could help more people. That's not getting a PhD is not a good economic decision for me.
It's not a good decision for anybody unless you are like completely committed to it. Because I mean, I dropped out of my program for a year just because I was feeling too overwhelmed, and I got back to it. But I just, again, generational learning. Just, you know, when I think about what that term may imply, you know, as you're saying, right? Like, you know, what's the use of this kind of credential or whatever? I think that speaks to a notion of people sort of see education as a private good rather than a public good. They see it as something where this is like, you know, it's going to benefit me and perhaps my family members or anybody who depends on me financially. You know, the notion of maybe generational learning, maybe it's more akin to, you know, learning for the benefit, not just of yourself, not even just the benefit of people who depend on you, but, you know, trying to advance, you know, human endeavor in whatever way you can, right, according to your ability and such. So, no, man.
Because right now, the old definition of lifelong learning.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever read like Common Sense by like Thomas Paine or any of B.F. Skinner's work.
Skinner. Okay, we were talking about Hollow Free Air a couple of times. I mentioned him, and I've what do I got? I got this really awesome book. I guess it's not in my pile right in front of me. Yeah, the Pedagogy of the Heart, right? It finally arrived through Amazon. But Skinner, okay, Dewey and Skinner are both people we should be talking about more on this show. And why I haven't actually read their primary writings only in as much as I've seen them, you know, cited. So
So basically, like Common Sense and some of the Skinner stuff is basically people are lazy and you got to force them to do stuff. That's why people get paid. That's why people that just have a good salary can often be so unhappy. Like 2/3 of people hate their jobs, right? And it's like, that's not why I do things. It's like, it's nice to get thanked, but I'm doing it because it leads into my the next picture, right? The Ikagi.
Oh man, this is
it's the reason for being stuff. It's what are we doing? Are you doing something because you're good at it? Is it what you love? Is it what the world needs? What you can be paid for? And it gives you the definitions that go with it, and it's a beautiful document.
I'm just admiring the circles and the overlapping of the circles.
Yes.
In you know, Big Bang friggin' Venn diagram style. I do love me a good Venn diagram. So
that's right.
And then you got this one, same old mistakes, and then glorious new mistakes.
That's my philosophy with technology. That is literally my philosophy. It's like, do I want to keep going down that same path, or do I want to do some lifelong learning and make new mistakes?
If you're willing to dispense with a certain amount of certainty and comfort, there are some real joys to be found. I think generally, it's like, you know, that Beckett saying or whatever, you know, fail now, fail better, fail now, fail better kind of thing. Whatever that, you know, I could
For,
Google
for
it.
me,
But
my philosophy of this is when people think I'm joking about when I do woodworking and I say I make a lot of firewood, it's because I do. Like if I mess up a cut or screw something up, yeah, I burn it. And then the mistake's gone. I get another piece of wood and I make it better that time. And eventually I
okay,
made something. Nobody ever looks at that that pile of stuff in my fire pit that I burnt or in the stove that I burnt. They see the finished product. They don't see
but
everything that went in the.
well, but that sort of formative version is still informing the finished product.
That's
Um,
right. But
and
we're
just
we're so product driven,
yeah,
right? And these poor,
what's the output look like?
yeah,
There couldn't. I was going to start saying bad things about our former employer. I'm not gonna. I'm gonna be generous. I'm gonna be generous to myself and not end this episode on a negative path. We got a
well,
couple
okay,
more.
before we do that, I have
Yeah,
one last picture I want to share, and it's a
please
screen
do.
capture of
Yep.
my Google Drive.
I
And
noticed that again. I'm like, yes, that's dope right there. So can
because
you?
this person put together all kinds of material and shared it with the world,
Yep.
and it's awesome. And I was digging into it, and I was just, oh, I was just overwhelmed, right? Because
The
that
pedagogy of
went on and
abundance.
on. The
That's
contents
where.
went on and on and on, and what the heck am I looking for? And it was just too much. It wasn't curated. It was drinking from the fire hose, and I went into
So
shutdown mode. So I
so
couldn't learn that way.
so we're not saying here that we're not like when I'm saying like down with the LMS and stuff like that. I mean, I know that there have to be practical, workable solutions. And again, you're talking about the value between trash and treasure. Sometimes being in the perspective.
Yeah,
Increasingly, you may find, well, how well is it curated? How well is it represented? And I have
yeah,
only started to come to the realization very late in my career that, yeah, people actually do place a lot of value on these outputs. And my whole thing was, well, there's a lot of formative stuff behind it, and that's equally valuable. People without education credentials just don't see that. People who are in charge of education without education credentials don't see that. And I'm just
yeah.
like, I'm trying to just sort of say, well, yeah. Anyway, I'm not talking about anyone specific. I'm not talking about anything specific. See,
I've worked at a
nice,
couple of
nice.
places that
Yeah,
if you want to talk about those places and that
yeah.
disaster, we could do that.
We're
So
we're 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 going out on a high note here, Doug. Though. So
yes, and on a high note,
yeah.
I put my there's a Christmas party that you're invited to. It's at Nakatomi Plaza on December 24th.
I saw that. I'm like, no, that is like first of all, who even has a Christmas party on the 24th? Because people are supposed to be off site from work most of the time then, but
Yeah,
whatever. Um,
it just made me
okay.
laugh.
Well, and just as we were sort of chatting here, I did just Google out because I Google out. I think that could be a new thing. Googling something up, Googling something out. Okay, Samuel Beckett. The actual quote is, "Ever tried, ever failed, no matter, try again, fail better." I'm like,
Yeah,
man, I could almost get that, a tattoo of that. I don't know. Anyway, so that's just,
right on.
yeah.
I think we've pretty well wrapped her up.
Well, swell. I'm glad, man. I've enjoyed this a lot. Hope everybody out there has an excellent, restful, rejuvenative holiday, if that's what you're after. And we're coming back a week
In a
from
couple of
now.
weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking. I know I was sort of the person who kind of put it to you, like maybe I need, I think maybe let's, assuming you're okay with it. Well, you're the schedule decider. I'll just say you can disregard my previous off-camera thing about maybe we need to take a week off. I'm like, nah, man, let's just keep doing it. So,
Depending on your reasoning, if you're not going to write your book, then no, I don't want to do it.
I've no. Okay, so I got this rampant fiction enterprise that I'm going to get into,
Yeah.
but actually, it's like my kids will be starting school, in the new year, and it's like, I think I can just sort of, shift it into that period, because in terms of tying up loose ends, I got a couple of blog posts that are just kind of sitting half finished. There's a girl I want to date in Salmon Arm. Anyway, so
Dude, I get it.
so the pod, December 29th, December 30th, we can have a special rock me out of 2022 episode or something like that. We'll
cool.
Anyway, I'll leave that with you. Schedule.
We could have a greatest hits kind of thing.
We could like pick over the previous episodes and or something. But
and that'll be our baker's dozen, so that'll be good.
Okay. Well, thanks to everybody who's checking this out.
Thanks for listening.
Happy holidays, and we'll be in touch with you again real soon. Take care.
Right on. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.